Hi, this is Chris Nielsen. I'm with Pascale. This is Breaking Up with Fear, and Pascale has volunteered to be on the show today. Love hearing her stories about breaking up with fear. So we had talked a little bit earlier. What was one of your big fears in life?
So thanks, Chris. One of my big fears and also one of my biggest desires was to start my own business. I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit, and ever since I was a little kid, 9 years old, selling things in the playground. And but actually, in terms of starting my own business in my mid-20s, I had a lot of fear around that, and it was this contrast between this really strong wish that I had
Mm-hmm.
and the fear. And I think that because I so wanted it to work, that probably contributed to feeling a little bit daunted by it.
That's, I mean, an interesting thing. As a kid, I was selling bubble yum to other kids at not in the playground, but at recess and lunch. So I did that as well. And I love, that you address that particular fear. Now, you also work with clients, executive clients, is that correct? In helping them
Absolutely,
overcoming
yeah.
their fears. Yeah, what are some of the
Yeah.
fears they run into, and how do you help them overcome their fears?
So a typical client I work with would be a mid-career engineer.
Mm-hmm.
And just thinking of a couple of clients that I have at the moment. And, they're people who've got into their profession because they love the technical side of things. They've become very skilled and had a lot of training around the technical side of things. And around the age I am, I'm 45, they get into a situation where they want to be promoted, but they get promoted into management roles in which they have to do a lot of people work. And they're not confident about their people skills. So that can really hold them back in their careers and becoming an executive, becoming a leader, because they simply don't feel that they're very good at it. And they're not always right about that, actually. It can just be a fear that when they do the work in terms of leadership, coaching their team, managing up, down, and sideways, business development with clients, etc., all of those things which require a lot of face-to-face contact with people, they have a fear that they won't be as good at that as they are with their technical skills. And they are people who are committed to excellence. They're people who are used to delivering really well on things that are quantifiable.
Mm-hmm.
And this is qualitative stuff. So what I find is that they're leaving a lot of money on the table because they're not getting those promotions. They're not putting themselves forward. Sometimes they're even turning down opportunities. And they're not going for the bigger projects, the bigger influence that they could have, and achieving great things that they want to achieve, but they want to do it well, which is kind of where I was. I think I wanted to start my business, but I wanted to succeed. I think there's a fear of failure there.
So you can really relate to them in that fear of failure.
Yeah.
They're really good at what they do now, and they know this is something new. And what I get about adults, when we do something new, we're uncomfortable in it, and we make that uncomfortableness bad. So
Yeah.
let's go to this. How did you overcome your fear to get into that in the line of work you're in? And how do you help them overcome their fears?
So in terms of changing my career, going from, I was an architect working in London. I had a really good job with a great company, award-winning buildings, really interesting clients, etc. And, on the face of it, I was very successful, and I could have stayed in that company and just kept working up the ranks, but it wasn't really me.
Mm-hmm.
And I had this feeling that, something was missing. And at some point, I think my courage had to get bigger than my fear of moving forward.
Yeah.
And I think as well, what really helped me, and this is what I encourage people to do, is that when you're working in a job, a lot of your network and your social network may be based around that job. So the people that you interact with are also employees, or they're in that corporate structure. You go out in the evenings for drinks, or you hang out with people who are in the same phase. And it sort of becomes a bubble where you don't really know how other people live when they're not doing that. And that lack of familiarity can really hold you back. So when I started thinking, I think what really propelled me to start that business was starting to go out there and meet people who were doing the kinds of things I wanted to do.
I love that.
Looking, I started buying Inc magazine rather than, Architect's Journal or something
Uh-huh.
like that. So I started looking for people who were doing things that I liked, that I wanted to do. I started, hanging out online with people that I admired. And as soon as you found two or three people who are entrepreneurs as well, and they're not going to tell you that it's easy or quick or that, you're going to be making millions within 2 years. People are realistic about how much work it is. But the enthusiasm and the inspiration and just the ideas that they can tell you, this is how you do it. And suddenly you become familiar with their world, you step into their world. And so over a couple of months, it becomes your world as well. And now you've got the choice. You've got two things that you're familiar with: stay at your corporate job or move forward and start your business and be in entrepreneur world with all these great people that you've now met.
Yes. I love a few things you said in there, especially your courage bigger than your fear. I find that true.
Yeah.
For someone. When your courage, it just pulls you through things, and you realize once you've been pulled through that particular fear, go, oh, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was. And then the
Yeah.
other thing is hanging around that group of people that you're looking to be, it becomes the fear starts dropping. Hey, they're not that different than me. They don't have that many more different or better skills than I do. So I love both of those things. I think they'd make a huge difference in someone's life. So thank you for sharing that. What, when you work with them, do you ever help them? How do you help them choose between staying at their job and doing the entrepreneurial stuff? Or do you say jump all in?
It really depends. But in principle, there's a lot of work that you can do to build up your entrepreneurial endeavor while you're working. Obviously, it depends how much time you've got and how busy you are with your job. But I was setting up a business that was related to my work. I was working as an architect in an architect's firm, but I was setting up a magazine for young architects. I was setting up a network, an online network, and events-based company around architecture. So what we found was that actually I could work on those things, and it was in a way that was supporting the company that I was working for. So they were very supportive. My boss was actually very supportive. I think he probably knew that I was going to leave at some point anyway. But he was interviewed for a magazine. He came and spoke to events. So there was a synergy between what I was doing in work and how I was building up my business. And I've seen that many, many times, is that people actually, sometimes their previous employer actually becomes their first client or one of their best clients, or refers clients to them.
I've seen
So
that as
they
well.
were
Yeah.
very encouraging. We're still friends now. So
I love that story, and I think that story is great for so many people, and also even intentionally, that if you're at a job that you're ready to get out of and you want to go entrepreneurial, find things in that particular job or new things in that role that you can take on that build your entrepreneurial skills. So I think
yeah,
it's a powerful story what you shared there, that maybe set some light bulbs off on other people to go, wow, I should just do this. I should take these roles that stretch me while I'm working to get ready for what I want to do next.
yeah. And I think even doing a small entrepreneurial project, something that's quite time limited, like for example, we started with creating events. So we would just organize an event, and it was just a one-off. But then once we'd done one, people wanted a second one. People were asking, when's the next one going to be? So it grew like that. And I think growing organically worked really well for us. But I wouldn't dismiss the idea of just making the leap, because I think sometimes you need escape velocity. When you have a job,
Yeah.
it is hard to leave because you've got the regular paycheck, you know what you're doing every day, you have the community, the camaraderie, etc., all of that security. And sometimes if you know you're going to go for it, then sometimes just going for it is the way to do it. And people describe it as it's like jumping out of a plane and building a parachute on the way down.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that. And it's so true. You have this feeling of free fall and what have I done?
Yeah.
And I think in a way, burning your bridges and having to make it work is a huge, powerful driver for making it happen.
Absolutely. I love
So
that.
yeah, I think you can do either way.
Yeah, I love jumping out of a plane, building your parachute. But if you do it in real life, Do not jump out of a plane without a parachute.
Exactly. Yeah.
Except, I say this jokingly. I did. I jumped out of a plane without a parachute. I did. Now the guy strapped to my back, he had a parachute on.
Yeah.
So yeah, for most people, you got to know yourself. I think for some people, it's better to not burn the bridges, but just go fully all in, because you got golden handcuffs at work. You're working all the time that keep you from doing what you need to do to be really successful. But on the other hand, for some people, knowing yourself is having that baseline. You don't go in there with lack out in the world creating your business. So I think there's powerful, you can go one way or another or somewhere in the middle. You got to know yourself with that. How do you help them know themselves?
It's a lot about understanding what their core values are. And I think the thing that really motivates people to find their courage, to get over their fear, is knowing really in your heart what's important to you. So, asking the 5 whys question, why is that important? Why is that important? Really thinking about, the quote from Mary Oliver, what will you do with this one wild and precious life? Which I love.
But
what are you going to do?
That one more time.
Life.
I say that quote one more time. I love that quote.
So Mary Oliver, a famous quote, which is, what will you do with this one wild and precious life?
What will you do with this one wild and precious life? Yeah.
So, that's the thing. And I think if you can get to that spirit of actually, yes, I want to do something entrepreneurial, or I want to achieve something in my career. That might be moving up into leadership roles and where I am, or in a different company. Once you know what that is, and really it's about taking time. And that's what we do in our coaching. That's what I do with people, is actually saying, what really are your goals? What are your sort of biggest dreams and deepest desires for your life? And for some people, it's family. For some people, it's travel. For somebody else, it might be writing a book. But I will tell you this: in all of my coaching, it always surprises me, actually, and quite often surprises my clients, what their deepest desires are when we actually get to them. And I love to create that space, even within the first session, for them to really step into and be able to own that. Because I think a lot of the time we know it's there, but we don't believe that we could pursue that, or that it would be right to do so. We have all sorts of stories holding us back from owning our dream in a way. And
absolutely.
That's what I help people to do, is say, if you're, whatever the reason is, once you know it, that's your alignment, it's your compass, it's your north star. Your compass will be pointing that way, and you'll always know if you're going in the right direction, even if it takes time. As long as you're in alignment with your direction and what's really meaningful for you. It's different for everybody.
That's beautiful. And I think when we find our deep purpose, you're right. It's easy to say no to the distractions and be more focused on what's important and have a better chance at being successful at something. And, just the fears out there in general do you see a fear when they get a hold of this why, or once they have the why and the why, the reason, the passion, the purpose, once they find that, do you see their fears drop down, or do you just feel their courage grow?
The courage grows, and I think sometimes some new fears come up, because the fear of trying it and not succeeding can be quite big.
Yeah.
I talk about a concept called a wish and a fear. And for every fear, there is a wish behind it. It's like the other side of the coin, and you can't separate them. And for every wish, there's also a fear behind it.
I love that.
And we can do an exploration with people, and it's really simple but really powerful. You do an exploration, you say, oh, what are you afraid of? And they will say, for example, I'm really afraid of public speaking. And, I feel like I want to do this business where I would be getting up on stage, but I'm afraid of public speaking. And I'll say, okay, well, what is That's your fear of public speaking. What is your wish from public speaking, that if it went really well, what is it actually that you would like? And they would say, well, I would like the audience to applaud. I would like to be, celebrated. I would like to be on the cover of a magazine. I would like people to say nice things about me. I would like and things like, I would like my brothers and sisters to be proud of me. And maybe that's where their fear is coming from. Their wish, their deep wish, is that their family be proud of them, or a particular person will be proud of them. And actually, they haven't connected to that. Their fear of public speaking may well be connected to that one person that they really, really want to be proud of them. And their fear is that when they get up on stage, they will fall short of their own expectations in relation to how they want to be perceived. And sometimes that can be a completely transformative moment for them when they realize, oh, that's my wish, actually. And they can hold on to that. And the fear just it's not about public speaking anymore. It's about, I want to do something that makes me feel proud. When we get together for Thanksgiving, or, when my big brother calls me up, I want to say, I'm going to be proud of what I'm doing. And I want him to be proud of me as well. And then that will be their North Star that pulls them forward, and all the other issues just kind of fall away.
So the awareness that their wish really is ramping up or making bigger that fear. And when they have the awareness that they can see, they can see this whole picture, the fear starts to melt away a little bit.
Yeah.
I love that, because one of my fears was public speaking. It was around me sweating, and I sweat a lot. So especially when I was speaking, and I had this horrific thing or memory that haunted me like a ghost in middle school when I was to give a speech. And when I got up to speak, I just poured sweat like I've never poured sweat before. And it haunted me every moment, but my why was so big, it kept pulling me forward. And that's what made me courageous enough to keep getting up. And then when I found other techniques to drop fears and other things, that went away. And now I'm more afraid of not getting up on stage.
There you go. Exactly. So you find another thing that's.
And that isn't a big fear. Even then I can let that go too. But it's interesting to look at fear and what it stopped me from getting. And that's because it stopped me from doing so many things. I can tell by the way you talk that you can really help people get a better look at why they're doing something and what is really important to them. Finding those things and that awareness of, hey, what does your fear look like? Those can make it a lot easier to do what you set out to do. So it sounds like you've done really powerful work. What other fears would you like to talk about, or what in your own personal life, maybe a fear you haven't broken up with yourself personally yet?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, actually, one that's come up a lot in conversation with people this week, and I certainly have it still, is asking people for money for my coaching, asking people for money for my services. And I've done a lot of work on this, and I wouldn't say that I've completely broken up with it yet, but I have methods to get myself to actually do the things that I want to do. Because obviously, if I want to be making, an entrepreneur and having a business, hiring people, etc., I need to be paid for my work. So again, it was about working through actually what is it that's going on, because fear is almost always relational. Okay, there's the fear of like physical danger, like falling off a cliff or falling out of a plane without a parachute, without someone strapped to you with a parachute. But there are obviously physical dangers that we are, programmed to be wary of.
Yeah.
The main one is actually, and it's the main driver for most of our fears, is the fear of rejection by other people.
Yeah.
The fear of attack by other people, because we are almost all of our safety and our ability to survive and thrive is to do with us being in community. So, it's incredibly strong instinctively in all mammals, all animals that live in groups have this same fear, that they need to be with others and they need to be accepted as part of that group. And I think that's why we have fear of public speaking. That's why when you have an embarrassing moment in middle school, it's such a powerful thing, because that group is where your safety would be. And if they reject you or attack you or mock you and humiliate you, then that's very, very dangerous for you as an individual. You wouldn't survive outside of the group. So it's important just to acknowledge that and realize this is a very useful instinctive human fear. We all have it, and it doesn't need to stop us from moving forward. This issue of asking for money, again, is it's not really about the money. It's about, what will that person think of me?
Right.
And what if they turn around and laugh at me and say, you're not worth that? Or, who do you think you are? Another one people have a lot.
Yeah.
And I work through that and saying, wow, I really feel, I feel 7 years old, and somebody is laughing at me and saying, who do you think you are? And that was what was behind my money issues, was saying, if I'm asking for money, I'm saying that I'm somebody, and I have value, and my work has value, and I'm not going to just give it away for free. And my fear was that someone would say, why do you think you're worth that? Or have some sort of negative reaction. And it's still there, but now that I'm more aware of it, then I can work with it. And once I've done a little bit of holding myself with kindness around the fact that fear is there, then I will then be able to write the invoice or do the call where I'm going to say, this is my price, etc. I think working through it with some techniques, having some tools and techniques to be able to work with it and not just ignore it or try and push it to one side. To acknowledge it, that it's a very powerful mechanism of self-defense that we have for a reason. I don't know what your what would you say to that in terms of the idea that fear is often relational with what will other people think of us?
No, I agree with you. When I talked about the fear of public speaking, so you're speaking my language, is that I go way back. I wanted to figure it out in me. So I said, let's go way, way back in time to caveman days. What could happen if you stood up to speak? And people shout out things. You could get stoned to death. You could get clubbed to death. Sure, that could happen. And then I go, what's worse than that? You get rejected by the people and then shunned, sent out, and you're going to die anyway, and you're going to die alone, which I think in us, because like you said, we're community people, we're tribal people, we depend on each other. We're not as strong as the elephant, the tiger, the lion, the bear. We're not as strong as those things because we survived here, we thrived here because we came together, we worked together. And because of that, we depend on each other. And if we lose the connection with the group, we're all on our own. That feels so dangerous. That rejection, that's why rejection feels so powerful. And I think you hit on it too. When we have the awareness of these things and you keep the awareness, that can go down. But what I get is that the program lives in you, the story lives in you, and it's burned in there so strongly, you got to build this other one up. And I love what you said this, hold yourself in kindness. Kindness. Yes.
Yeah. Hold yourself with kindness. Yeah.
That was a big key for me. So how do you help people hold themselves in kindness? Because my self-kindness was a key to my success in terms of getting over these fears and actually enjoying it. So how do you help people do that?
I'm thinking about how I learned to do it. I learned to do it through, I think I was quite hard on myself.
I was really hard on myself. Yeah.
A lot of people are, and I think it's in our culture as well. And I think particularly people who are kind of typical alpha overachievers, entrepreneurs, we can be quite critical of the world around us and also critical of ourselves. We hold ourselves to high standards, etc. It gives us a lot of drive, but we can be hard on ourselves. And I experienced a period of after the 2008 recession, when I was running my architecture company, and all our work dried up, because it does. First thing that stops in a recession. We knew the writing was on the wall for a while, so we were working so hard to try and keep going. And by the time we just had to stop, and I took a period of time out because I had 2 little girls at the time, so I wanted to spend more time with them. And I just experienced burnout and depression, and that really hit me like a train. And was again the flip side of having worked so hard trying to keep going, was that when I stopped, I had a lot of backlog of not having held myself with kindness and not having supported myself physically and mentally as well. And through that, you know, I got therapy, found a great therapist, and also I started meditating. And through learning about Buddhist psychology and this thing about self-acceptance, that's where I really got it from, was saying, in therapy, I could see how hard I was being on myself, what the voice I was talking to myself with, just not how I would talk to my friends.
No, that's good. Otherwise, you wouldn't have many friends.
Exactly. You know, why I was doing that. And then the meditation side, the mindfulness side, was about that huge piece of kindness and self-compassion, as well as compassion for other people. But you think you're a person too. We're all part of the same ecosystem. You can be as compassionate to yourself as you are to your friends and family and even strangers. And it's interesting because we find it actually a lot easier in our culture to do the well-wishing towards other people, even because we do this. I don't know if you know anything about Buddhist practice, but there's what they call metta, which is the loving kindness practice. And you're clearing your mind and you're saying, may you be safe, well, and happy, over and over again. May you be free from danger, may you be free from pain, may you be free from discomfort and distress, may you be safe, well, and happy. And you do it for a benefactor or someone who's been good to you. You do it for a neutral person, like a stranger, and you do it for a difficult person or someone who's actually done something bad to you, and you practice, but you also do it for yourself.
Yes.
And they found that in the West, it's very common that the most difficult one is people doing it for themselves. People find it actually easier to do metta for someone who's hurt them or someone who they consider to be really bad than to be able to say to themselves, may I be safe, well, and happy.
Yeah.
You know, and then you realize actually the depth of what's going on in your own psyche, that you're not allowing yourself that really basic wish of, I just want to be safe, well, and happy.
I love that example. I mean, just kind of wrapping in all of that a little bit, is that when I work with groups of CEOs, I ask them, how many of you are hard on yourself? The majority of the room, actually.
Because all the hands go up.
70 to 90%. I also do point to the most dangerous person in the room to you on almost everything I do, because it's us. It's the stories we tell ourselves. I mean, I was really harsh on myself. And one of my teachers over the years said, see if you can get away. If someone says something mean to you, you can walk away. But see if you can get away from yourself. And I tried.
Yeah.
But you can't do it. Wherever you go, there you are. And you're right.
Yeah.
If we spoke to our friends in the voice we speak to ourselves, we wouldn't have any friends.
And also we wouldn't like ourselves for doing it. We wouldn't consider that ethical.
Right.
To talk to somebody else. And yet, for some reason, talking to myself really badly did not seem to be an ethical dilemma for me.
No.
This is the irony, right?
Right. We're given, it's almost programmed into us there too. It's like the commercial part of society. You are not good enough. That programming runs under everything, it seems.
Yeah.
And we take it on, and our well-meaning parents pass it on, and our well-meaning friends are trained in it as well. So everyone's living in this I'm not good enough soup. And if you pop your head out, it all feels a little bit wrong at first, but then it feels great once you get out of that. Amazing. So you said something too, and I remember in the email, burnout. I know a lot of people are going through burnout. You went through it as well, it sounds like. What was the keys for you getting out of that? And where does fear relate in there?
Yeah, I mean, the burnout situation I saw it coming quite a long time. I knew it was building up. I just didn't know what to do about it. The only thing I knew what to do was to get a therapist to help me. But in a way, I was already, I think by the time you notice that you think you're at risk of burnout, you're already there. And you're already probably quite deep in it already. So, we're very good at ignoring the signs and just keeping going. I think particularly in a place like London, where everybody's very, very go-getting, keep going, and everything's supposed to be tough and stressful anyway, there's a lot of encouragement from other people to keep going.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, I had a period of depression afterwards, which was, I consider to be my body and my mind taking care of me and saying, that's it, girl, you need to just stop. And I know full well that the minute you feel a little bit better, you're going to be back on the train.
You're
not getting
so right.
away.
Yeah.
So you're going to stay in bed until
Yeah.
you've actually worked this out.
Yeah.
And it was getting a great therapist, and also getting a learning the mindfulness practices. And it took me several years, and I've written about it in my blog, but it's there was a moment where I actually had a full-on panic attack at Gaia House, which is a wonderful retreat center in the UK. Mm-hmm. So I was doing a 3-day or 4-day meditation retreat. I had this kind of, total blissful moment. And then suddenly I just almost like fell through the floor. Mentally, I just cold sweat. And I didn't know what was happening at all. I didn't recognize a panic attack because I'd never had one before. And luckily, the person who was leading the retreat was actually a psychologist, a psychotherapist, and knew exactly what was going on, very experienced, and a monk as well. And he just checked that I knew which way was up, and I was still in touch with reality. And then he said, you're just experiencing a panic attack, and it's not unusual in meditation circles that happens. And I was like, oh, okay. And after that, I had several panic attacks. And it took me maybe 6 months before I worked out kind of what was going on for me. And I remember listening to an amazing recording on Dharmaseed of a talk by Joseph Goldstein, who's a great Dharma teacher. It was called Working with Fear. You might like it, actually.
That sounds great.
And he talked about his experiences with fear. And I remember him saying that at some point he was in, I think, India in a doing a year-long retreat or something like that. And he said, at one point, I was so afraid I couldn't go from sitting down to standing up. And I thought, and it was entirely, all of it was in his mind. It was all stuff that had been going on in his mind, and he was working through it by being on this retreat. But I thought that was fantastic, and I just thought, I know what you mean. I know what you mean by that thing of like, it can be that powerful. I was so afraid that I literally couldn't make myself go from sitting down to standing up. He just kind of got paralyzed by fear. And I'd had an experience a bit like that, where I was just lying in bed, just literally terrified. And I couldn't move, but I also couldn't stay there because I was just in this panic. And it reminded me a little bit of what Eckhart Tolle wrote in his his experience of having had quite severe depression and then having this moment of sort of almost collapse and then rebirth from it. And it was like that. It was like everything just stopped for a moment, and then after that everything was different. I can't really explain why, but that's kind of what happened. So and after that, actually realizing, I looked into what causes panic attacks, how they work, different people's experiences of it, some research into why meditation can cause panic attacks. And then once I'd listening to that talk about working with fear, it just went away, and I haven't had a panic attack since. And there have been times when the conditions have been right, where I realized it was a physiological thing as well that was causing the panic attack. So, for example, if I haven't eaten, I have quite low blood pressure anyway. So if I haven't eaten, I'm going to be quite lightheaded. If I drank too much coffee, I don't drink coffee anymore. What was happening is that my body was perceiving that this lack of blood pressure was it was triggering some sort of a mind-body loop that was throwing me into this panic attack. So I thought that I had the physiology experience of being afraid, the kind of fight, flight, freeze, the freeze response of being really, really afraid. And then when your blood pressure goes down, your body will make you collapse so that because it doesn't know if you've just, received a huge wound and you're losing blood and you need to just get on the floor, and that's the safest place. But once I understood it, it just went away.
That's really powerful, and I can see how it fits in my life too. It's I can feel an edginess and anxiety and go, where is that coming from? And I've just basically said, I don't need to keep this program going to its finish.
Yeah.
I can just accept what is. And I think sometimes it's the resisting of this, what feels like a negative feeling in your body, and giving it a meaning. Oh my gosh, this is bad, which gets you into that endless, oh my God, it's getting worse cycle where you just spin down like crazy.
Yeah.
And to just say, hey, it's okay that I'm feeling this right now. And when you give it permission, this acceptance, it starts to melt away. So I find that
Yeah.
very powerful. And I love the way you described it in yourself. And I'm sure other people have experienced that numerous times.
In fact, the one phrase from you just reminded me from that Joseph Goldstein talk was he said that the way that he had the defining moment for him of almost letting go, and in terms of breaking up with fear, he sort of almost just allowed it to be there rather than fighting it. The idea of what we resist persists.
Yes.
That at some point he remembered just being in the thing of fighting the fear, and then at some point he just went, if I feel like this for the rest of my life, it's okay. And that was it. And I remember I had that moment after I'd heard this talk. At the moment, a while later, I remember sitting on a park bench in London and just having this. It was actually just after a therapy session, and I had this overwhelming kind of, I could feel the panic attack coming on. I was sitting in a beautiful green park on a bench, middle of the day, people around, nothing scary at all. But I could just feel it rising, all this emotion. And I was thinking, oh, it's happening again. I remembered Joseph Goldstein saying, if I feel like this for the rest of my life, it's okay. And I told myself the same thing. If I'm stuck in this panic attack for the rest of my life, it's okay. Because I had that awareness of what was going on, and that was just enough. It was that little tiny chink, that little tiny chink in the armor in a way, the little bit of light that got in that said, if you're aware that it's happening, then it's not the entirety of your experience.
Right.
And I think that is what the mindfulness teaching is all about. Even in the most difficult moments, can you still be aware of what you're experiencing? Then you have the opportunity, you have the ability to be with yourself and say, this is a really horrible moment, and I'm gonna be a good friend to myself in this moment and not beat myself up about it. Why are you having a panic attack in a park in the middle of the day? Why
Yep.
are you this stupid that you keep having these panic attacks that stir the
Yeah.
tea?
I love what you said, so I was trained in awakening coaching by Arjuna Ardha. And one of the things he talked about, and I look at it, here's my particular look at it. These feelings are coming up and knocking on our door. And if we don't answer the door, they keep knocking, or they go away and then they come back and knock some more.
Are they coming through the window?
Or they come in through the window, sure. I love that. Or the chimney.
Yeah, they come down the chimney, yeah.
They get in there, or they get you when you go outside just for a second. But what I get is that once you fully embrace that particular fear, that feeling, it seems to melt away. And it's like feeling it fully allows it to go, oh, you've felt me, you've seen me, you've understand me, I can go now. You've lived this experience. And I do love the phrase you use. What is it? I feel like I could live with the rest of my life. And it just takes the pressure off of it. Instead of you're constantly pushing it away in this feeling and go, oh, it's getting worse and worse. No, I could, if I had to, I could live with this.
Yeah. It's like letting go of that desire for control, the narrowness.
Oh, the desire for control. I think we could have another conversation on that. And
exactly.
Would love to have you again here. Pascale, is there anything you would like to share as we wrap up in the next couple minutes? And how would people reach you if they were to reach out there and want to find you after this interview?
Sure. I mean, I think my main message is that if it's something that your heart desires, you should take it seriously. And you should, in this one wild and precious life, you should honor that and try to, work through your fears. They say, the fears that hold us back are often trying to protect us. and we can honor them and say thank you to the fear. Thank you, and I'm still going to move forward. I'm still going to go for this wish that I have. And it's almost like saying, I can stay where I am and stay stuck in these fears, or I can move forward. I'm going to have different fears, different problems. I want to have bigger problems. I want to have better problems. I'd rather have the problem of dealing with, hiring and firing staff than have the problem of not even having started my business.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather have the problem of somebody stealing my intellectual property than not ever having created any intellectual property for someone to steal. I just think we're never going to get away from fear. It's part of our experience, and we can just be kind to ourselves. Actually, I don't know if we've got time to do this, but I wonder if you might have a couple of minutes to do a little thought experiment, which will show people what kind of things I do in coaching. It relates back to this issue of being in relation and needing to find people who are doing the kinds of things that we aspire to do before we can leave our kind of old life and behind and move into the new one. So I'm just thinking, who are a couple of people that you really admire in your life?
That are alive or dead?
No, they could be. They don't have to be alive. You don't have to have met.
Well, in today's atmosphere, Martin Luther King, incredibly inspiring. I've given my poor version of his speech a couple times in terms of practicing to be a better speaker myself. My friend Clinton Swain is an incredible example, and my mom, who has shown me unconditional love her whole life. I say she's got the joyous sunshine eyes, so I'm so blessed. Yeah.
Wonderful. And so those three people, what would you say is the main attribute that they have that inspires you in them?
That's interesting. The Clinton is a wild genius that puts himself out there in a big way. I think maybe his boldness for him, but it's different. And then, Martin Luther King was bold. And I guess my mom was bold in her own way. She was a high school counselor that at my 20-year reunion, people came up and said, your mom saved my life. Your mom is the reason I'm a teacher. Your mom's the reason I got through school. She stood up and believed in people. Sometimes she calls herself a wimp, and I hate when she does that, because she powerfully stood up for others. And I actually think they all do that too. Martin Luther King powerfully stood up for everyone, not just people of his own race, but all human beings he stood up for. Mm-hmm. Clinton Swain creates the expansion for people, and my mom stood up for people all the time as well. So it's really incredible.
I'm guessing that's something that you also aspire to in your life.
Yeah, my mom to uplift human beings, to help them drop their fears so they can live a better life. Yeah, absolutely.
So I invite you now to imagine that you're going into a situation in which you have fear, mm-hmm. but you're doing it propelled by this desire that you have to be a bold person, to stand up for other people, to help people to expand their lives, etc. But you're going into a situation in which you feel somewhat daunted or a little bit underconfident. But imagine that those three people, Clinton Swain, Martin Luther King Jr., and your mom, are standing behind you and around you. They've got your back. They're standing as allies. How does it feel to go forward now?
Powerful. Yeah. It'd be wonderful to have them all there.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that I've done is actually made a little folding, I've got three little photo frames that fold together.
Yeah.
And I've got the photos of all the people that inspire me in there. And when I feel like, I just feel quite alone going forward, like I'm pushing and confronting my fears and everything, I will put them there and say, these are my allies. These are the people who are with me. And I will take some time just to imagine that they're actually physically standing behind me, mm-hmm. As my team, my gang, my cheerleaders, my champions. And I kind of think, and I'll say to them, what do I do? I'm really afraid. What do I do? And they'll tell me the answers. It's me telling myself, obviously. But then what would mom say? What would Clint say?
Right.
What would
No,
mom
I
say?
love your thought experiment, and I play with thought experiments all the time. And yeah, it is powerful. And you bring up too, Clinton Swain, he's created world leader portraits, and he's got hundreds of them, and they fill his training room when it's in person. So all these people you can have standing behind you in a way. And I think it is us speaking to ourselves, or maybe we can channel, what they would say. And thank you for the gift of that thought experiment today. Thank you for the gift of you being here and sharing this wonderfulness with me. It's made my life better. I hope that someone watching this, it makes their life better. And they reach
It's
out.
a lot of fun for me as well.
Yeah, and they reach out and connect with you. How do they reach out and connect with you?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you can find me on LinkedIn if you've got my name, Pascale Scheurer. I'm quite often on LinkedIn or on Facebook. And my website is called intelligentfutures.co.uk. I'm based in the UK. So intelligentfutures.co.uk. That's where my information about my executive coaching and career progression coaching is. So people can reach me either LinkedIn or through my website.
Thank you. This has been an honor and a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
I would love to have you come back again anytime.
Great. Thanks, Chris.
Oh, you are so welcome.